Okay, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. So, welcome to this brief webinar on breaking the cycle, healing unresolved trauma from the inside out. This is a webinar on brain spotting intensives that I do, which is a deep and gentle path to mind, body, and soul wholeness. So, okay, I'm just going to pull up. All right, guys. So, before we get into the meat, I am going to tell you a little bit about myself. So, I am Victoria Valdez. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. Si hablo en español, I'm bilingual in Spanish and English. I'm the owner and clinical director of Trice Energy Counseling. I specialize in a lot of different areas, but some of my passions are working with women, children, teens, and parents and adult males with trauma. I do a lot of work. I get a lot of referrals from marriage counselors who send me their clients to do individual work while they're working with the marriage couple. So, something that I specialize in is trauma, anxiety as well, integrating brain spotting, mindfulness, and other body somatic centered healings. As a community leader, I do lead the Spanish speaking therapist group. And I also really love being a mom of three, a wife, and an avid Latin dancer, as well as doing creative writing and being out in nature. So, a little bit about Trice Energy Counseling is that we do offer services virtually and in person. And you should check our website because we do offer virtual services for people in other states, depending on which state it is. And then we also have wellness intensives and wellness services that are like parent coaching or ADHD coaching. Or anxiety or trauma intensives that are not the same thing as therapy, even though we may use some of the therapeutic modalities that work. And so those are offered to anyone in the world. You do not have to reside in the state of Tennessee. And then, in addition to my services, we do also offer family counseling and immigration evaluations for those that are their mental health evaluations that are for immigration cases. All right, let's get into the meat here. So, what is trauma? Right? It's more than just a buzzword. I know it gets talked about a lot, but not enough in the right way. Um, so, trauma really is this long lasting emotional and physiological response that really results from living through something that was very distressing, very it could have been very terrifying, something that you really scared you. It's different from, oh, that spider that was dangling, right? Not to belittle or minimize any phobias, but I'm just giving you an example of something that you felt was very distressing for you. It was a unsafe or overwhelming experience. Um, Trauma is not listed in the diagnostic manual. You don't get diagnosed with trauma because it is listed rather as PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder. So, and that has a certain criteria, but you don't need a diagnosis or have to have a diagnosis for PTSD to get help on any type of trauma that you've experienced that's affecting or you or getting in the way of you living your best life. So, let's talk about the internal impact of trauma that has been unresolved. On a fundamental level, it really harms a person's sense of biological safety. So we don't feel safe in our bodies, or our nervous system don't allow us because of whatever happened. Our self worth, our confidence can feel very low. We may carry lots of shame or self blame, right? And then it's difficult, it becomes unresolved trauma becomes difficult to regulate our very high emotions. It often affects our relationships and the way that we see our loved ones and the way that we interact with them. It may cause us to feel suspicious of people or always on edge and worried. Are they going to like me? Do they love me? And so then we're leading our behaviors and our life from those trauma wounds, right? Um, It's the shadow of the past, right? So long after the event ends, it leaves that echo or a residue, right, of shame or fear or whatnot, or helplessness or hypervigilance, right? And oftentimes people ask, well, where did the trauma come from? Or oftentimes people and clients, I think the number one thing I see is this idea of comparing your trauma to someone else, right? Oh, well, it wasn't so bad. Other people, like my trauma wasn't so bad. Other people went through worse things, right? Oh, it was just, I really even didn't get hurt. It was, the active shooting was next door and I wasn't really hurt. I imagine the people that were in the space are more traumatized than I am, right? And so, really, it doesn't matter how it affected someone else, it's how it affected you. And so I really work with clients around that. And one of the, experiences that can cause trauma, not that are in the diagnostic criteria for PTSD, can be community violence. It can be severe bullying. I'm sorry, it could be community violence, war, natural disaster, any violence that was done to you. It can be abuses like sexual abuse, any those type of things can also be part of the PTSD criteria diagnosis for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But outside of that, unfortunately, our diagnostic manual hasn't changed yet to really emphasize like the effects of trauma um, that aren't from a natural disaster, that aren't from violence, it isn't from war, right? Because it can come from bullying, it can come from medical emergencies, it can come from a loss, a divorce, an attachment wound. Um, an attachment figure, a parent figure, or a guardian figure. It can happened during young ages that was never processed or resolved. And so later in life, you're feeling the effects still. Can be from racism and so much more. It really, really, there's no, oh, that doesn't classify as a traumatic experience for you because it depends on how it affected you and your body and your wiring. I love this quote, the true nature of trauma. This quote from Gaber Mata: trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside you as a result of what happened to you. Has that mind body connection. So, because trauma really lives inside you, inside your nervous system, inside that brain body connection, true healing, true trauma resolve really requires that biological body brain centered nervous system shift, not just intellectualizing with logic or rationalizing through with talking. Although talk therapy is very helpful and can be very helpful if our nervous system is on fire 24/7 and we're just living in these stuck loops of what the trauma has done to us. It's makes it difficult for us to use our logic and rationalize or intellectualize through it and just do a thought process through it. We really need those therapy modalities to take us into a deeper level. So the generational flow, right? So unresolved trauma in everyday life. How does unresolved trauma ripple outward in our lives or through generations? So let's look at the relationship mirror. Unresolved trauma dictates our adult relationships. It does. The dynamics of it. It manifests, sometimes by as a control issues. It can be that deep mistrust that I talked about earlier, where we're having trust issues with our partner. Um, when I think of relationships, it can be romantic relationships, friendships, colleagues, or any type of relationship. Or it could be an extreme fear of being vulnerable, opening up, and sharing our emotions and our feeling, our internal world with others, right? Having unresolved trauma can cause that walls to really come up. If you're a parent, the parenting echo, you know, um, it really can affect the way that we parent our children, most definitely. That was one of the biggest transformers in my own life, was working through my own trauma and how much my children recognized that I was able to parent from a more calm, regulated state. And so if you're a parent, when our nervous system from trauma is stuck in that survival mode, it really does affect the way that we co-regulate with our children when they're young. Or if you don't have children right now, thinking about the future children, or if you have, not siblings, nephews and nieces, children in your life, and how that affects your relationship with them, right? It affects our irritability level. We're more irritable. We have low emotional tolerance. So our tolerance level is low. We're more impatient. And there's so much more by the way that we're affected. Our parenting is affected through our unresolved trauma. And then breaking the cycle, right? So healing our own nervous system, our own trauma is one of the most effective ways to ensure that if you have children or children are in your life, that they inherit a legacy of resiliency and historical, you know, rather than those historical family wounds. And so you really are breaking cycles. And the future, is transformed by it. So the many faces of trauma, right? Everyone has a story. It really is my belief that you can't escape trauma. There's birth trauma. There's in while you're developing in the womb trauma. There's so many. We just from conception to the end of our journey on earth, like we're going to at some point experience something that affected us, distressed us deeply. So relational and systemic, right? We may have witnessed domestic or family conflict or violence, right? Um, Systemic racism. We may have experienced that. Chronic discrimination and microaggressions or macroaggressions, generational and historical trauma that's been carried on for generations, environmental and situational, right? Serious accidents, surgeries, TBI, a life threatening illness, or that going through that with a loved one, the sudden or violent loss of a loved one, a refugee experience, displacement, or war, divorce. A lot of times people are like, oh, well, my parents were divorced, but it wasn't really, and then they start talking about how they felt isolated at their parents because of the divorce, couldn't really give them the love and care that they needed. So that was a distressing environment for them. Or they were fighting all the time, their parents, and maybe they weren't physically abusive to each other, but they yelled and screamed, right? Um, so there's different ways that the divorce can really affect and leave a trauma mark or imprint in ourselves. And this leads into that deep roots of childhood trauma and attachment wounds. So, what is an attachment wound? Well, that occurs as a direct result of the actions or inactions, right? Because of neglect of a primary caregiver during those crucial early developmental years when a core attachment styles are being formed. The way that we see the world, the way we see ourselves in the world, our confidence, the way we believe about ourselves, all those things are critically formed during childhood. And so it can be really affected in a detrimental way when we have these deep attachment wounds, right? And so the adult legacy, that abuse and emotional neglect in early childhood can carry the most severe adverse psychological consequences into adulthood if left unaddressed. Many of my clients really struggle with being vulnerable, opening up, identifying their emotions, notice giving space to their emotions because they grew up in an environment with their home life where it wasn't safe to talk about their emotions, or maybe they were only allowed one emotion. Maybe their parents meant well, but they just always wanted them to be happy, or maybe they shut down. You shut down because your parents never let you talk, or your emotions weren't welcome, right? Um, there's so many examples I can give. And so it really spills out into our relationships throughout life. So, subconscious storing, right? So, adults, we frequently carry internalized poor self esteem, many of us. And it's because of our attachment wounds as a child. We may experience intense rejection sensitivity and severe difficulty setting boundaries and limits, or extreme difficulties following and respecting other people's boundaries. So, on the other end of that, we might struggle with that. And also, something to consider is that many research articles at the root of many uh, mental health diagnosis is unresolved trauma as a foundation. And I would say, from my own experience of working in the field for 10 years, it always, whenever I use brain spotting, which I'm going to talk about a little bit, it always goes back to childhood. And there's always some type of distressing event that shaped what the client brought to the table today. And if we can address that target that, then we can alleviate what's happening today. So, what is unresolved trauma? You hear me saying that a lot, right? So, unresolved trauma happens when we suppress and push down or try to force ourselves to just forget the trauma or the distressing event. We just try to box it up, hold it in, and not throw away the key, lock it up, throw away the key. We push it down into like an internal lockbox, right? Or black box, like an airplane black box that's impenetrable, and it expands over time. So your body and your brain is in this continuous present time in this threat from the past. So, unresolved trauma causes a person to experience disruptive physical and emotional reactions in the present time as their body and mind continue to defend against a threat that belongs entirely in the past. Dr. Judith Jackson. I love this quote so much because it's true, it's powerful, is that we are responding to our environment in present time from things from the past. Whether our response is healthy or unhealthy, it has to do with wiring from our past or distressing trauma from the past or present. Like maybe it happened 6 months ago, right? So, the mind body toll of unresolved trauma, symptoms of a burdened nervous system. So, the emotional and mental toll of the trauma, right? There's that chronic hypervigilance, the inability to ever drop your guard and feel relaxed. So many clients, after doing therapy with me in an intensive or working on weekly through the trauma with weekly sessions or intensive, it doesn't matter. We all get this sense of relaxation. Our body stops tensing. Our neck pain goes away, our shoulder pain. Now, with the caveat is if you don't have body pain due to some other medical condition, oftentimes it's because of all of the hypervigilance, the tightness that we're carrying in our body because we're constantly looking for danger, sensing and scanning danger because of this distressing experiences that happened to us that were never reprocessed and integrated into our brain, that brain body connection. We may experience disassociation, right? Brain fog, a persistent feeling of emotional numbness, deep control tendencies to overcompensate for past helplessness, explosive anger, a profound emotional dysregulation. We may experience extreme worry, excessive anxiety, or depression from it. The somatic physical toll, chronically elevated blood pressure, cortisol's levels that are increased, that are left unchecked, that we're in this constant state of cortisol, high cortisol, then we can develop autoimmune diseases from the internal, I can't think of the right word, it slipped my mind. Inflammation from the cortisol that's 24/7 because of unresolved trauma. There's sleep disturbances, insomnia, maybe sleeping too long, reoccurring nightmares or flashes, right? Unexplained headaches. I talked about that. Body aches, chronic nausea, severe digestive issues that are not better diagnosed through some other medical issue, right? When we've done the medical testing and there's nothing else and your body is still having headaches and body and nausea and digestive issues, it's often because of trauma, unresolved trauma. Um, somatic flashbacks, body memories that physically, recreate an old pain, a tightness, or a pressure. But there is hope. There is hope. There is deep relief. So you don't have to spend years managing symptoms if you don't want to. You can completely resolve the root cause. You can welcome a faster, deeper way to heal your mind, body, and soul. The way that I do that is where I mentioned intensives, using somatic integration. So traditionally, we've tried to heal trauma through talking and making meaning of the event, which is all useful and powerful ways. But the methods that help calm that arousal system in your body, your nervous system, that fight, flight, freeze, really sits deeper in the regions of the brain and that nonverbal part that connects to our brainstem that operates with our nervous system. It's all this connected and firing, and I'm making this up, but like nanoseconds, right? I need to look up of how fast these firing processes in our system, right? And they, in the past, traditional talk therapy has been helpful, but if our body is in constant fight, fight, it's hard to just rationalize and talk through. Oh, well, we can just be less worried. We don't have to be afraid about that thing anymore. We don't have to feel insecure, right? Because we can be secure in ourselves. That sounds great and amazing and awesome. But if our body and brain still aren't integrated to feel that level of security or peace or calm or confidence, then we can talk circles about it and still not get to where we want to be. So one of my number one tools that I've used is brain spotting. I'm four different ways of brain spotting trained. Phase one, phase two, group brain spotting, child brain spotting, as well as I've taken some other neuroception brain spotting as well. I love it. I've been doing it for over 7 years. I even see my own therapists who provide me with brain spotting because I know how effective it is. It was developed by David Grand, who his phrase about brain spotting is where you look affects how you feel. And so there is a ocular brain connection. So where your eyes are seeing and taking in, right? It's scanning everything. It's taking in the pressure. It's taking in the visual and connecting to all the different sensories in our brain and body, right? So when your eyes focus on a specific point in space in front of you or beside, you're not just looking outward. You're really there. You're assessing a precise neural map structure system inside your deep survival, that nonverbal part of your brain where distress memories are physically locked, that are, when your nervous system's connected, right, to the brainstem and to every part of your brain. And so when it's physically locked in here, it's also activating those areas, right? And so brain spotting really is a collaborative approach. There's a collaborative discovery together where you and I, we locate these physical brain spots together. I help you, figure out where is it the most connected to what you're experiencing to safely unlock that trauma, to process it, to discharge and release that trapped stress, survival, fight, flight, freeze, fawn that's happening in your body 24/7, right? It really helps to reprocess it, reprogram it so it's not just popping up all the time. Talk therapy versus brain spotting. So you have that traditional talk therapy, which is that focuses on that primary conscious state, the analytical, logical, cerebral cortex brain, right? It really helps to make sense of the things intellectually. It really does. But it oftentimes doesn't reach that emotional engine room, that nonverbal, that part that is, firing and wiring together the nervous system, all of that. It doesn't always, get to that level. Brain spotting bypasses that logical thinking brain to access that deeper regions of the brain, that nonverbal part, the limbic system and the brainstem. That's where that nervous system starts, right? And, where survival memories and the nervous system's triggers are held, right? And so the healing advantage is that since this really targets the access, excuse me, um, allows for targeting access to facilitate a very natural, rapid emergence of deep personal insight. And it really allows clients to shift from a core negative belief or unhelpful thought, right? It helps you shift out of that without getting flooded or re traumatized. So before brain spotting, clients often you might feel you're feeling stuck in the same emotional patterns. Maybe you've been to therapy for years and it's been so helpful, but you're still having these trauma triggers. Maybe you're feeling overly easily overwhelmed by stress or triggers, irritability. You have anxiety that feels difficult to control. You're carrying the weight of the past experience. You have constant mental overthinking. You're feeling disconnected in your relationships and from yourself. You're coping instead of truly healing. We're putting band-aids on things, but not really addressing the core issue, right? So after the brain spotting, clients feel this greater emotional balance, resiliency. They have increased ability to respond instead of react. They have a calmer nervous system. They have reduced intensity of emotional triggers. They have more mental clarity and focus, stronger sense of confidence and self-trust. They have greater freedom to move forward with your life. You're less anxiety, you're experiencing less depression, you have improved sleep, less body aches. So that's what can happen after brain spotting. Um, so what is these intensives I mentioned? So the intensives are really a fully integrated somatic experience. I'm using the brain spotting to target and safely release that physiological root of trauma in the deep brain layers in the body. Utilize virtual sand tray, and that's utilizing symbolic creative imagery to access the subconscious mind. It's a great right brain, left brain processing, and rely without solely relying on speech. So I like to integrate those together, and I also utilize some somatic mindfulness, meditation, grounding. So this allows to ground your nervous system into a current moment to maintain safety and to regulate your emotions. And then I also utilize tools such as emotional freedom tapping, which really cleanse that physical somatic blockage and balances our systemic, our systemic system in our body and our energy, our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And then I also integrate therapeutic journaling or creative expressions on what best fits for you to integrate your new neurobiological insights into a really cohesive story of personal empowerment and change and transformation and healing. So we can, if you love to journal, we journal. If you rather do arts, do express creative expression through doing a collage, a virtual collage, a physical collage, or drawing or doodling. We integrate what works best for you in the intensive experience. So the power of a trauma intensive, now that you know kind of what do I use in there, um, let's talk more about what it is and how it operates, right? So imagine 3 to 12 months of traditional weekly therapy being condensed into a highly focused, laser focused, life changing 3 hour to 1 day to up to 3 days or more immersive format. It's a laser focused processing, no weekly distractions. We dive directly into resolving the core trauma triggers that is blocking your sense of peace and your present relationships and your life and your environment, right? It's a time and childcare saver, right? An intensive. Instead of spending months arranging weekly babysitting or schedules and navigating traffic and disrupting your weekly schedule, you achieve a massive gain because we're doing a longer dedicated window, and it's cost efficient, right? It eliminates those months and months and years of ongoing counseling fees since you invest in a larger targeted block of profound transformation time. So it can be more cost efficient for clients. And then here's an example of weekly therapy, right? You have your 10 minutes roughly to initial check-in, catching up on the past week, seeing if how you did on your homework for the week, right? Your interventions or whatnot. And then we might spend 15 to 20 minutes, depending, putting out the immediate fires, the crisis of the week, right? Dealing with that crisis of the week or what happened, with your relationship recently. And then we'll move into about 10 minutes, give or take, the real deep core trauma and wound processing we get 10 minutes of laser focusing on these underlying issues that are really feeding or guiding or driving the crisis of the week or the fire of the week, right? Is these underlying issues. We get 10 minutes to work on them. And then there's about 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes of a cool down, meaning we're wrapping up, doing a meditation, or we're not containing, we're saying goodbye, we're scheduling the next week appointment or whatnot, and the session is over, right? So that fragmented structure can prolong your healing journey for 2 years or longer. I've heard of clients who done intensives with me that they've been like this for 10 years and they've been going to therapy for 10 years, which is awesome. I have clients who I've been seeing for 4 or 5 years because they love the weekly maintenance. But if it's a trauma that you've been trying everything, you've done all sorts of things, then this could be a really good fit for you, an intensive. So again, that trauma intensive is either a partial 3 hours, which is half a day, or a full day, which is 6 hours continuous. So that it's expansive, it's unhurried space, it's completely free from weekly life distractions, it's undivided attention, and a longer duration. And you can do these up to 5 days, 3 days. It depends, it's curated to what your needs are. You have the deep rapid processing that allows your brain and body to drop seamlessly into that deep trauma storage layers and stay there long enough to fully resolve them. And like I mentioned, it can be 3 hours, it can be a full day, one full day up to 5. And so most clients achieve total resolution of their trauma wounds or their target issue in just a few dedicated days. Some only need one intensive, of a 3-hour intensive. Some like to do them one time a month for 3 months. Some, will do a whole weekend, immersive weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and never need it again. So it really depends on the person and what the target issue, if it's a more complex issue or if it's not as complex. So what have my clients said about an intensive? So clients have, said, I feel way less reactive to my trauma triggers, and I'm able to handle my high emotions better than I ever have in my life. It's a 38-year-old female. I no longer lay awake at night feeling guilty about what happened. The weight has been completely lifted. That's a 69-year-old female. I can finally talk about the traumatic event that happened without feeling like I'm choking. I can sleep peacefully now, a 42-year-old male. I feel so much less anxious than I have in years. My kids have completely noticed the difference in how calm I am. 36-year-old female. So these are intensive clients. And so one thing that's important is an intensive does not equal a therapeutic relationship with the therapist. So with myself, I don't diagnose anything. I'm not providing a diagnosis. It's private pay. It is a wellness service. I'm not billing insurance. I'm not doing any of that. It's really just focusing on that core issue that you have, that is disrupting your life, that's unresolved. Brain spotting intensives can be, or wellness intensives can be for anxiety, it can be for grief, so many different things, in addition to trauma. And so it's different in regular counseling in the fact that I'm not assessing, I'm not diagnosing. It doesn't establish a relationship, a therapeutic medical relationship. And so there's a lot more, ability to do more um, when you engage in a intensive. Well, if you have any questions, let me know. Please visit our website. You can use any of these QR codes to access them. If you have questions, if you'd like to sign up for an intensive, or if you want weekly sessions, that's okay. Every client is different. So a lot of my clients also love doing that weekly maintenance, and they'll mix in the intensives, or they want to go in that pace, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know yourself the best, right? Like what works for you. It's okay to just work 10 minutes a week on your trauma, if that's what fits for you and your life and what you love, right? So I hope to, service you soon and provide you with the healing support that you want.